We were never told the truth about one of the most shocking statements in the Bible. In the book of Leviticus it is written that the earth itself can become unclean because of human sin. But official translations and church sermons always focused only on ritual laws, while leaving unsaid the deeper message, that the moral decay of nations literally poisons the soil, the water, and the air. This is not a metaphor. It is a prophecy that speaks directly to our modern age. Why does the church almost never preach these lines? Why do theological commentaries dismiss them as symbolic or Jewish traditions, instead of treating them as a direct warning? The answer is obvious. If we admit that the Bible speaks of an ecological disaster, then we must also admit that humanity itself is destroying the planet, and that very destruction is triggering the apocalyptic mechanism. Think about it. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "The earth mourns and fades away, it is defiled by those who dwell on it, because they have broken the laws and changed the ordinances." This passage cannot be twisted. It directly links moral corruption to environmental collapse. And so the forbidden question arises, what if this prophecy does not apply only to ancient Israel, but to the entire modern world? What if we are living in the very time when these words are coming true? Politicians and scientists speak of global warming, climate change, and the carbon footprint. Yet no international conference dares to acknowledge what Scripture already declared: human sin is not merely a spiritual problem, it is an ecological disaster. And it is this disaster that makes the earth unclean. Like this video and subscribe to the channel, so you don't miss the next revelations. Because what you are hearing now has been hidden from you for decades. We were taught differently. We were told that nature is cyclical, that disasters have always been part of the planet's evolution. But the archives of ancient texts tell the opposite story. They state clearly, the earth becomes unclean when nations abandon God. This is not a random force of nature, it is a judgment. This is not coincidence, it is a system. And that system is unfolding right before our eyes. For centuries the official church erased such interpretations from its canon. Because if one were to say plainly that ecology is a spiritual barometer, then one would also have to explain why Christian nations wage wars, destroy forests, and pollute the oceans. Why the most advanced states call themselves the centers of civilization, yet they are the very ones who have poisoned the atmosphere of the planet. The true reason for this never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks are written by the victors, and victors are always the empires who hold power through resources. Babylon, Assyria, Rome, all of them built their glory on exploiting the land. And their downfall always came at the moment when the earth became unclean from blood, from idolatry, from lawlessness. The same is happening today. Look at the modern map. Great powers sign climate accords, they promise to cut emissions, yet behind closed doors they open new mines, build new pipelines, and launch new wars for resources. It is hypocrisy that strangely echoes the biblical image of the Pharisees, outwardly pious, but inwardly full of corruption. Is it any wonder that right now we are witnessing record droughts in Africa, massive wildfires in Canada, and cities underwater in Europe? Is this not what Isaiah warned, when he said the earth would fall because the commandments were broken? What if we ourselves are living in the very days of which the prophet spoke? The archives reveal a completely different picture. Nature is not fighting against us. It is we who have driven the world to the edge. Every new ecological disaster is not just a signal from the planet, it is judgment from God. It is a biblical script coming alive in today's headlines. Take one example. In Leviticus it is written, "Do not defile the land, for it will vomit out its inhabitants." These words sound like ancient poetry, but their meaning is shockingly literal. The earth cannot bear human sin, and it literally drives out those who destroy it. And today we see entire regions becoming uninhabitable. From the Sahara to the Arctic, from the Donbass to California, the earth is expelling its people. This is no coincidence. This is prophecy. Official statements are only a mask. Leaders know more than they admit. Is it not suspicious that corporations fund climate research while at the same time practicing the dirtiest industries? Is it not strange that world summits produce hundreds of pages of agreements, while the planet's condition only worsens? It looks as if they are consciously preparing for catastrophe, not to prevent it, but to survive it themselves. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. Just as Assyria once crushed nations with an iron fist, so today global powers tighten their grip through sanctions, wars, and control of resources. And in both cases the end is the same: the land becomes unclean, and the empire falls. We are used to thinking of the apocalypse as a distant future. But if we read the texts carefully, we see it is already unfolding. Not someday later, but now. And if the earth has already become unclean, then what comes next? This first episode ends not with an answer, but with a sharper question. If everything we see today, the fires, the wars, the floods, the poisoned air, is exactly what the prophets described, then we are not merely facing an ecological crisis. We are standing on the threshold of the final judgment. We were always told that the flood is just a myth. A children's tale about Noah and his ark. Picture book illustrations, wooden toy animals, a cheerful old man with a beard saving the world. But the real story was not for children, and it was anything but a fairy tale. It was a global cleansing, a verdict upon humanity that had destroyed the very foundation of existence. And the key details of the flood echo directly in what we see today. The Bible says the earth was filled with violence. And the Lord declared, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with corruption." This does not sound like a description of a natural disaster. It is a verdict. A judgment for moral decay and contempt for God's laws. And when we look at our time, the words of the prophets sound like a perfect description of the 21st century. We live in an age where wars never cease, not for a single day. Africa, the Middle East, Europe. From Syria to Ukraine, from Sudan to Gaza, the earth is once again filled with violence. The very same conditions that preceded the flood are being repeated before our eyes. Is that a coincidence? Now let us look at the elements themselves. Noah faced the waters that covered the entire world. We were taught to believe that this was a one-time event that would never be repeated. But is that really true? Look at the news. The melting of glaciers in the Arctic and Greenland raises ocean levels every year. Floods wash away entire cities in Europe. In Asia, tsunamis claim hundreds of thousands of lives. Hurricanes, carrying the fury of water, devastate the coasts of the Americas. Once again, water rises against humanity. We were told these catastrophes are simply natural anomalies. But the archives of ancient texts say otherwise. Every great disaster in history carried spiritual meaning. The flood was not just water. It was the judgment of heaven. And now the question, what if today's floods and tsunamis are the very same signs that once destroyed the ancient world? The prophets warned us of this sign. Jesus Christ said, "As it was in the days of Noah, so it will be at the coming of the Son of Man." This is not a metaphor. It is a direct comparison. In those days people ate, drank, married, lived ordinary lives, unaware that the end was already at the door. Today it is the same. We entertain ourselves, we buy, we build careers, we argue in politics, yet we fail to notice that the elements are already preparing a new verdict. What if we are living in the very days the prophet warned about? Look at geopolitics. After the flood, God gave humanity a covenant, not to shed innocent blood, not to destroy the earth. But mankind has broken it again. Great powers wage wars for resources. Oil and gas pipelines have become the chief weapons of modern empires. Water and land are once again battlefields. What the flood once wiped away, corporations and armies now destroy. Here lies the scandal that even churches remain silent about. The Bible states plainly that the flood was the result of humanity's corruption. Yet theologians have taught us to see it only as a children's fable. Because if we admit the true meaning of the flood, we must also admit that we are repeating the very same mistakes. And then we must speak about judgment, a subject modern religion prefers to avoid. The real reason never made it into the textbooks. Scholars still debate whether the flood could have been real. But archaeological evidence from Mesopotamia, geological traces of sunken cultures, and the legends of dozens of nations about a global flood all point to the same conclusion: this was no invention. It was a real catastrophe, later disguised as myth. And if it was real then, why do we assume it could not happen again? Water is a symbol of cleansing. It washes away impurity. But in the Bible, water also becomes an instrument of punishment. And this is what we see today. Floods do not just destroy cities, they expose the helplessness of governments. Tsunamis do not just kill people, they reveal that even the wealthiest nations are powerless before the elements. Melting glaciers do not just shift the climate, they show that the earth itself is beginning to cast out humanity. Look at the map of the world. Bangladesh is losing hundreds of square kilometers of land. Egypt faces the threat of the Nile Delta drowning. Small islands in the Pacific are already disappearing beneath the waves. This is not speculation, it is fact. And every new wave recalls the biblical script. In the book of Genesis it is written, "The fountains of the great deep were opened." And now, in the 21st century, those fountains have opened again, but this time because of human greed. We have pierced the earth with thousands of wells, drained it of oil, gas, and water. We have literally opened the depths. And now the depths are answering back. Does it not seem that the news and the prophecies have merged into one? That social media channels reporting disasters have become the modern book of Revelation? That the headlines of CNN and BBC sound like a continuation of Scripture itself? This is exactly the sign John described: the sea turning red, the fish dying, the ships sinking. And it is already happening. We are used to believing that science and technology will save us from catastrophe. But the story of the flood shows otherwise. No civilization can withstand judgment when it is filled with lawlessness. And if then the ark saved only one family, what will happen now? Will there be an ark in the 21st century? And who will enter it? Remember this: in those days, no one believed Noah. They thought he was insane. They mocked his warnings. And only when the waters covered their homes was it too late. Are we not like those people? Do we not dismiss the warnings because it is more comfortable to live in our illusions? This is the very moment when history becomes a mirror. The flood is not the past. It is a template. And today, it is repeating. The earth is once again filled with violence. The waters are rising once more. And only one question remains: will we hear the alarm before it is too late? We were always told that the earth is just a resource. Soil from which we take food, metals, oil, and gas. But the Bible describes the earth differently, as a living witness that can cry out to God. In the book of Genesis we read, "The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." This is not a metaphor. It is a declaration: spilled blood makes the earth unclean. Now let us ask ourselves, how much blood has the earth absorbed today? From Ukraine to Syria, from Sudan to Palestine, wars flood the planet with rivers of death. Hundreds of thousands killed, millions wounded, tens of millions displaced. And every bullet, every explosion, every mass grave is a cry of the earth rising to the heavens. We were always told that wars are politics, geopolitics, economics. But the archives of ancient texts tell another story. The prophets saw that when the land is saturated with blood, it becomes unclean. It loses its fertility, it stops feeding, it becomes cursed. And we already see this. Fields where battles raged remain barren for decades. Lands where blood was spilled turn into wastelands. The real reason never entered the textbooks. Because textbooks were written by empires that always justified their own wars. But the Bible does not justify. It says plainly, the land remembers the blood. And that memory becomes a verdict. Recall the story of Cain and Abel. Cain shed blood, and the land refused to give him strength. He became a wanderer. The same happens with entire nations. When people shed innocent blood, their land begins to reject them. It either grows barren, or it becomes the stage for new disasters. Look at the Donbass. Once rich black soils, mining towns, industrial centers. Today, ruined villages, poisoned mine waters, burned fields. The land literally refuses to live. Look at Syria, once fertile valleys turned into deserts and ruins. Look at Sudan, war has destroyed even the water, and people die from hunger and thirst. This is not just politics. This is the judgment of the land, saturated with blood. We were told that progress demands sacrifice. But that is the greatest lie. Because every such sacrifice makes the land unclean. Every barrel of oil extracted with blood, every kilogram of metal mined through slavery, every hectare soaked in chemicals and corpses becomes cursed. And in the end, we inherit a world that rejects us. The official church remains silent. It speaks of personal sins, of individual salvation, but hides the deeper truth. Collective guilt spills blood upon the earth. And that blood cries out to God. This is not only a personal sin, it is a global crime. And its consequences appear daily in the news. The archives show a very different picture. In the book of Numbers, God warns, "Do not defile the land, for blood defiles the land, and no atonement can be made for the land for the blood that is shed on it." This is a direct command. A land soaked in blood becomes unclean. And then judgment comes. Now look at modern geopolitics. The United States has waged wars on foreign soil for decades, and now its own land trembles under crises. China built an economic empire on exploiting people and resources, and now it faces ecological disasters. Russia justifies its aggression with sacred purposes, yet its land is becoming a wasteland. A demographic collapse, dying villages, the exhaustion of its resources. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. Just as Assyria built its greatness on war and collapsed into ruins, so modern nations repeat its path. And the end is always the same, land drenched in blood refuses to give life. This symbol is so clear it cannot be ignored. The earth is stained red with blood. The soil turns to dust. Fertility disappears. And all of this is no accident. It is a biblical script. Is it not strange that on the very lands with the bloodiest wars, new conflicts always ignite? Does it not seem that the earth itself pushes nations into further violence because it can no longer endure? It is a closed circle, blood calls for more blood. And only cleansing can break it. Politicians sign peace treaties, but these agreements change nothing. They are only a mask. For as long as the land is unclean with blood, no treaty has power. The prophets warned, true peace will come only when the blood is washed away. But today we see the opposite, blood is shed every day, and the land grows even more defiled. And now the most terrifying question, what if the planet itself is preparing a response? What if wars are not only politics, but also the way the earth purges itself? What if disasters are the reaction to blood that cries out to heaven? We can close our eyes, we can pretend that everything is under control. But the facts speak for themselves. A land soaked in blood becomes cursed. And we already live upon this cursed earth. We were always told that nature is limitless. That animals, fish, and birds are an endless resource. That extinction, the disappearance of species, is simply a natural process that has gone on for millions of years. But the Bible warned of something else. In the book of Hosea it is written, "The land will mourn, and all who live in it will waste away, along with the beasts of the field, the birds of the sky, and even the fish of the sea will perish." This is not a scientific forecast. It is a prophecy. And we see it being fulfilled right now. The world is living through the sixth mass extinction of species. Every single hour, several unique forms of life vanish from the face of the earth, never to return. And this is not an asteroid, not a cosmic catastrophe. This is humanity. We destroy habitats faster than animals and birds can adapt. Forests are being cut down, oceans poisoned with oil and plastic, rivers turned into sewers. We were told it has always been this way. But the archives of ancient texts tell the opposite. Extinction is not a natural norm, it is a sign of the last days. It is a spiritual barometer showing that the land is becoming unclean. And the most terrifying thing is that we barely notice it. The prophets foresaw the image of an empty earth. Isaiah declared, "The land will be utterly emptied and utterly plundered." And those words are not only wars, but ecology itself. For when animals and birds vanish, the land becomes a desert. And this is exactly what we see today. The Amazon burns. Australia loses millions of animals to wildfires. Africa loses elephants and rhinos. What once symbolized life now becomes a symbol of death. The true reason never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks were written by those who profited from destroying nature. Corporations expand plantations. States sell off forests. Governments hide the scale of the catastrophe. But the Bible already warned, when the land becomes unclean, the beasts are the first to perish. The official church stays silent. It rarely speaks of animals, as if they have no meaning. But for God, they do. He created them before He created man. And Scripture says more than once, the destruction of animals is a sign of judgment. And today we see that literally. The archives show a very different picture. Today we are told that animals vanish because of economic processes. But the prophets said, it is the consequence of human sin. Humanity broke its covenant with the Creator, and now the consequences touch the entire ecosystem. Look at modern geopolitics. The Amazon, the lungs of the planet, is being cut down for soy and cattle. Africa has been turned into a market for trophy hunting. China and Southeast Asia are emptying the seas through illegal fishing. The United States and Europe excuse it all in the name of the global economy. And the result is always the same, desolation. Land without life. This is the very sign John spoke of in the book of Revelation, describing the four horsemen. The pale horse, with death upon it, is not only about wars and plagues, it is about extinction. When the beasts disappear, humanity is next. Because we are part of the same system. And when it collapses, we fall with it. Is it not striking that pandemics often begin where the natural environment is destroyed? Viruses jump from animals to humans. COVID-19, Ebola, avian flu, all are direct results of breaking the boundaries of nature. The Bible warned, the land will be defiled. And we now see that it literally means infection, disease, death. We are told, this is only science. But why does science line up so perfectly with prophecy? Why do the images painted by Hosea so closely describe today's news? Empty land. Vanished birds. Dead fish. This is not just ecology. These are signs of the end. Official statements are only a mask. Politicians sign agreements on biodiversity protection, while at the same time granting licenses for logging and drilling. Corporations produce ads about a green transition, while behind the scenes they devastate entire regions. And here lies the scandal even churches avoid. extinction is not only a tragedy of nature. It is a spiritual sign that we are already living in the apocalyptic scenario. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. Babylon stripped nature to build its towers. Rome turned forests into fleets of warships. And today global empires repeat the same path. The end is always the same: desolation, death, collapse. Does it not seem that we live in a world where the birds have fallen silent? Where the seas have emptied? Where forests have been turned into fields of monoculture? And if so, are these not the very things the prophets foretold? This is the sign we cannot ignore. Because when the animals vanish, humanity will be next. We were always told that biblical images are only symbols. That 1/3 of the earth, 1/3 of the trees, and 1/3 of the rivers described in the book of Revelation are just poetic metaphors. But let us look at the numbers. Modern environmental statistics show we have already lost 1/3 of the world's forests. We have polluted 1/3 of all fresh water. We have destroyed almost 1/3 of the species that lived on Earth only 100 years ago. This is not metaphor. This is the literal fulfillment of prophecy. In Revelation it is written, "The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down upon the earth, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up." Does this not sound like the fires that now consume entire continents? Canada, Australia, Greece, Turkey, every year millions of hectares burn. Smoke covers the skies for thousands of kilometers. And the numbers of what is lost are dangerously close to that 1/3 John described. We were told this is just apocalyptic literature. But the archives reveal something else. The prophets literally saw the earth burning because of human sin. And we now live in a time when these lines read not as myth, but as the evening news. Look at the waters. Revelation says, "The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a great mountain, blazing with fire, was thrown into the sea. 1/3 of the sea turned into blood, 1/3 of the living creatures in the sea died." It sounds like fantasy, yet modern science confirms, 1/3 of the oceans are in crisis. Dead zones without oxygen. Coral reefs collapsing. Fish disappearing at catastrophic rates. And yes, the waters literally turn red with toxins and oil spills. The true cause never entered the textbooks. Because textbooks are written by the victors, and victors always hide their guilt. Governments speak of natural processes. Corporations excuse themselves with economic needs. But the Bible says plainly, this is judgment. It is the consequence of the land becoming defiled. The official church remains silent. Because if they say openly that the 1/3 numbers are already coming true, they must admit, we are living not only in an ecological crisis, we are living in the days of Revelation. And that truth is too dangerous for mass awareness. The archives reveal a different picture. Deforestation in the Amazon has reached a point where the lungs of the planet no longer produce oxygen, they consume it. Rivers in Asia are so poisoned that the water can no longer support life. Lakes in Africa are drying up completely. This is the very 1/3 that has been lost. And the world pretends everything is fine. Now look at geopolitics. Global summits promise a green transition, but reality is different. The United States, China, and Europe compete for the right to pollute less, yet still burn billions of tons of fuel. Russia opens new oil and gas fields. Africa is turned into a testing ground for the exploitation of rare metals. And every agreement signed for the sake of the climate becomes a verdict upon yet another 1/3 of the earth. Everything we were told about these alliances has proven false. For while they speak of protecting nature at conferences, in practice they destroy the planet. This is the very hypocrisy Christ described. They honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. Babylon built its glory on irrigation systems and destroyed its land through salinization. Rome cut down forests for wars and fleets, and lost its fertility. Today the story is the same. The technology is different, but the end is unchanged. The earth is losing 1/3 of its strength. Does it not seem that we are standing on the edge? That when 1/3 becomes 1/2, there will be no return? Is this not the very sign the prophets warned about? Like this video and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next reveals truths hidden even from the archives of the church. We were always told that solar eclipses are astronomy. That smog in the cities is just a side effect of industrialization. That black clouds over nations are only weather. But the Bible paints a very different picture. The prophets foresaw a time when smoke would darken the sun and the moon would turn to blood. This is not metaphor. It is an apocalyptic description of what we today call industrial pollution and climate catastrophe. In the book of Joel it says, "The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." We were taught to see this as mystical visions. But look at the news. Hundreds of millions of people in China, India, and Pakistan live under a carpet of smog. In Mexico City and Los Angeles, mountains just a few miles away are invisible. In Delhi, children grow up breathing poison. Does this not look like prophecy fulfilled? We were told, this is simply economics. That without factories and smokestacks there is no progress. But the archives of ancient texts remind us, darkness is always a sign of judgment. In Egypt, darkness covered the land before the liberation of Israel. In the prophecies of Isaiah it is written, "Darkness will cover the earth and thick gloom the nations." And now we see it literally fulfilled, smoke covers the skies above nations. The true reason never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks were written by those who financed the factories. They spoke of economic development, but concealed the fact that this progress was built on poisoned air and millions of deaths from lung disease. The official church speaks almost nothing about ecology. It avoids the subject of smog, as if it were not spiritual. But the Bible directly connects smoke with judgment. In Revelation we read, "The shaft of the abyss was opened, and smoke rose from it like the smoke of a gigantic furnace." The sun and sky were darkened by the smoke from the abyss. Do we not see these shafts of the abyss today in the form of industrial zones, oil refineries, and coal power plants? The archives reveal a very different picture. Modern science confirms, smog kills more people than wars. Every year more than 7 million die from dirty air. That is more than from any other catastrophe. And yet this is a silent war, unspoken on major networks. Why? Because it profits corporations and governments. Look at geopolitics. For years China has been the factory of the world, sending smoke into the heavens. The United States and Europe moved production there to keep a cleaner image while consuming cheap goods. India follows the same path. Africa becomes a dumping ground for toxic waste. It is a global arrangement, producer and consumer sharing roles, while the sky disappears. This revelation changes everything. Because if we read Revelation not as symbol, but as literal description, then we are already living in it. The smoke that covers the sky is already here. This is not the future, it is the present. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. As Babylon once burned its furnaces and offered smoke to idols, so today corporations offer smoke for profit. And the end will be the same, darkness that covers the nations. Is it not strange that in an age of greatest progress we live in the most poisoned air? That our children breathe more toxins than any generation before them? Is this not the sign that the end is near? Like this video and subscribe to the channel, because next we will uncover even darker archives, hidden even from the faithful. We were always told that the climate changes by itself. That there were ice ages, there were warm eras, and now we are simply going through another natural cycle. But the Bible describes something else. In the book of Revelation, angels are said to hold back the winds of the earth. And as long as they restrain them, the elements remain in order. But the moment comes when this control is released. Then the wind, the storm, the forces of nature break free from human command. Is this not what we see today? Hurricanes are stronger than ever. Typhoons devastate entire nations. Tornadoes wipe out whole cities in just minutes. In recent years we have seen storms called once in a century, yet now they come every year. Record heat, record cold, record extremes. The balance of the elements is gone. This is the moment when the angels have let go of the winds. We were told the reason is industry, greenhouse gases. And that is true. But the archives of ancient texts add another dimension. Winds are the symbol of God's order. When humanity lives in harmony with the Creator, the elements obey. When it rejects His laws, the angels release their hold. And the elements become judgment. The true reason never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks were written by those who financed the oil and gas empires. They spoke of natural change, but concealed the truth. We ourselves triggered the process, and now it is beyond our control. The official church avoids the subject of climate. It speaks of saving the soul, but rarely of the storms that destroy homes. Yet the prophets directly connected natural disasters with human sin. In the book of Jeremiah we read, "I will bring down on you a violent storm, and it will burst upon the heads of the wicked." This is not just poetic imagery. It is the literal reality we now see every year. The archives reveal a different picture. Climate refugees are already here. Millions forced to abandon their homes because of storms, floods, and droughts. Villages in Africa buried by sandstorms. Asian coastlines disappearing under typhoons. Even in Europe and the United States, thousands displaced by fires and hurricanes. This is the new map of the world, written in blood and suffering. Look at geopolitics. Climate itself has become a weapon. Nations accuse one another of pollution. Sanctions are imposed in the name of environmental standards. Wars for water and land have already begun. Before its civil war, Syria endured the worst drought in a century. Africa suffers from water shortages that spark conflict. Even in Europe, disputes over rivers and resources are escalating. This is a global script already unfolding. Everything we were told about peace treaties is a mask. For no treaty can restrain a storm. No summit can command the wind to be still. The prophets warned, when the angels release the winds, humanity will learn it does not control the planet. And that moment has come. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. Egypt collapsed after years of drought and famine. Assyria fell after climate crises. The Roman Empire weakened under ecological strain. And now we see the same on a global scale. Climate breaks empires, and it will break the modern ones. Is it not strange that in an age of highest technology we are powerless before wind and rain? That rockets reach space, yet a single storm can erase a metropolis in a day. Is this not the sign that humanity has lost control because it has lost its spiritual foundation? What if we are living in the very days when the angels no longer hold back the winds? When the climate itself becomes the final warning? When every storm, every typhoon is not merely weather, but a sign of judgment? Remember, in Revelation it is written that after the storms comes the seal. Which means climate disasters are not the end, they are only the prologue. And the true end is still to come. We were always told, no one knows the day or the hour. But the Bible gave clear signs by which we can recognize the approach of the end. Not a calendar, but a system of markers that repeat again and again. And the most terrifying truth is this: these markers are already being fulfilled right now. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus said, there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. We read this and think, someday, in a distant future. But look at today. Famine grips Africa and Asia. Diseases return in new forms. Earthquakes destroy Turkey, Syria, Haiti. This is not the future. This is today's news. We were told, apocalypse is just a legend to keep people afraid. But the archives reveal something else. Prophecies were warnings, road signs placed along the highway of history. And right now, every single one is glowing red. The true reason never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks were written by empires that found it convenient to hide the meaning of catastrophe. They present them as natural cycles, as political crises. But the Bible calls them by their true name, signs of the last time. Look at geopolitics. The prophets said, nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. We live in a world where wars have become the norm. Ukraine, Syria, Yemen, Africa, Taiwan, Israel, new fronts multiply each year. Global alliances are crumbling. The United Nations is powerless. NATO expands, but does not bring peace. China and the United States prepare for collision. This is the very picture Christ described. Another marker is the persecution of believers. Jesus said, "You will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death." We think this speaks only of ancient times. But today Christians are persecuted more than ever. China shuts down churches. North Korea sends believers to camps. Africa is drenched in the blood of martyrs. And even in Europe and America, faith is mocked, sidelined, and discriminated against. Another sign is the cooling of love. Christ warned, because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. Look around. Society is fractured. Families are falling apart. People are indifferent to suffering. Social media has turned hearts to stone. This is not just a moral crisis. This is a marker of the last days. The archives reveal a very different picture. What looks like chaos is actually a script. A sequence of signs God gave so we would recognize the moment. Wars, diseases, disasters, persecution, cold love, none of this is random. These are markers forming one system. And that system itself testifies, we are approaching the end. Official statements are only a mask. Politicians say, we are in control. Scientists say, these are natural processes. Churches often say, do not rush to conclusions. But the prophets were direct. They did not say someday. They said, when these things happen, know that the end is near. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. As Rome, before its fall, was torn apart by wars, epidemics, and moral decay, so the modern world now faces the very same markers. And the end then was certain, the empire fell. Why do we think this time will be different? Does it not seem that we are already living in the days of Revelation? That all the signs have converged at once? Wars, pestilence, earthquakes, persecution, the cold of love. This is not prediction. This is reality. And what if we are the generation that will see the end? We were always told that the sea is limitless. That the oceans can swallow any waste, cleanse any poison. But the Bible warned of something else. In the book of Revelation it is written, the sea became like the blood of a dead creature, and every living thing in the sea died. This is not just a metaphor. It is a prophecy of seas turning into poison. And we already see it happening. The oceans, meant to be fountains of life, have become dumping grounds. The Pacific garbage patch is a sea of plastic the size of a continent. Fish swallow microplastics that end up on our tables. Whales wash ashore with stomachs full of plastic bags. Coral reefs are dying. Seas literally turn red with oil and chemicals. Is this not the very sign John described? We were told, this is temporary. That technology will clean the waters. That biodegradable plastic will save us. But the archives of ancient texts warned, the sea becomes poison not by accident, but as judgment. This is not a problem of technology. It is the result of a civilization's sin, turning God's creation into a trash heap. The true cause never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks were written by those who made billions from the plastic industry. They knew about the problem for decades. As early as the 1970s, scientists warned of catastrophe. But corporations financed ads for a disposable future. And now our oceans are choking on waste. The official church is silent. It does not speak about plastic, as if it were trivial. But can God ignore what we have done to His creation? In the Old Testament it is written, the land was defiled under its inhabitants. Is this not exactly what we see today with the oceans? The archives reveal a different picture. This is not merely ecology. This is a spiritual sign. Seas turned into dumps mirror a civilization whose heart has become defiled. As once God sent the flood to cleanse the earth, now the seas themselves cry out for cleansing. Look at geopolitics. Nations sign agreements on ocean protection, yet continue dumping waste. China is the largest producer of plastic. The United States is the chief consumer. Europe ships its waste to Africa and Asia. Africa and South America have become landfills. And each country pretends the problem belongs to someone else. This is a global conspiracy. Official statements are only a mask. Conferences speak of a green economy, but the numbers show the opposite. Plastic production keeps rising. And plastic does not disappear. It stays, in oceans, in fish, in our own bodies. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. As Egypt once drowned infants in the Nile, so modern empires drown life in the oceans. As Rome once polluted the Tiber, so we have polluted the entire world's seas. But those were local tragedies. Today it is global. Does it not seem that we already live in a world where the sea has become dead? Do you not see that every wave now carries not life, but trash to the shore? Is this not a marker of the last days? The archives of the prophets now sound like headlines: the sea poisoned, fish perished, ships destroyed in storms. And we dare to call this an environmental issue? This is judgment. This is a sign. This is a marker that the end is near. And what if plastic itself is the new plague of Egypt? For it does not vanish. It multiplies. It haunts every generation. It is in our water, in our food, in our blood. It is the eternal stain of our civilization. And it will stand as evidence against us at the judgment. The sea does not forgive. It returns everything. And what we threw into it now comes back into our own bodies. And this is only the beginning. We have walked through forbidden archives hidden for thousands of years. We have seen that the biblical prophecies about the earth becoming defiled did not remain in the past. They have come alive in our present. Waters rising and sweeping away cities. Soil drinking the blood of wars. Beasts vanishing from the earth. Forests burning. Air turning to smoke. Winds tearing apart continents. Seas suffocating with waste. We were always told, these are natural processes, cycles, accidents. But now we know, there are no accidents. All of this is a system of markers. And that system is leading us toward the end. The true reason never made it into textbooks. Because textbooks were written by those who had every reason to hide the truth. The empires of the past pretended to control nature. Modern nations do the same. But the prophets already warned, when the earth becomes defiled, it means the end is near. Look at the world today. Politicians sign agreements, but their promises are only a mask. Corporations launch glossy ads about a green economy, while producing even more poison. Churches remain silent or turn away from the subject. But reality cannot be hidden. The earth is crying. The waters boil. The skies darken. The animals vanish. These are the very signs the prophets spoke of. The shadows of ancient empires rise again. Babylon, Assyria, Rome, all of them fell when the land became unclean. And we are repeating their fate. The global Babylon of the 21st century is already cracking. Its economy is built on blood and waste. Its culture bows to idols of consumption. Its rulers play at being gods, yet cannot command even the wind. Is it not strange that right now, when we boast of the highest technology, we are powerless before the elements? That rockets fly into space, but fires and floods destroy our cities? Is this not irony? Is this not a sign? And what if we are the last generation before the end? What if today's headlines are not coincidences, but the fulfillment of texts written thousands of years ago? I will not give a final answer. This mystery remains open. What do you think? Leave your comment below. I want to know if you see in this prophecy the same signs that I see. If you noticed any inaccuracies in the text or in the narration, I ask your understanding. This voiceover was created with the help of artificial intelligence, and some details may have been distorted. Write about the mistakes in the comments, and I will correct them in the next videos.